Welcome back to Insight, and we're continuing with the conversation, the courageous conversation on Native voices, and we have two guests with us today. We have Kalinda, and Kalinda Klein is with Upper Grand District School Board, and she's the Guelph Equity and First Nations curriculum leader. And then we have Jody Williams, who's with the department. She's the department head of Alternative Education, First Nations, Métis and Inuit Studies at St. Thomas Aquinas. So thank you very much for coming with us. And I know that the focus for us now is education and your experiences within the education field and things that are really, really important to you in terms of what you take to the school and what you'd like to take back to the community from the schools. Do you want to start with it, Jody, your project maybe?
Jody, can we start with your t-shirt? You wore this t-shirt for a statement.
Yes.
It needs some airtime.
So,
what does it say? Honoring our sisters.
Yes, so this is...
missing and not
there you go.
Forgotten.
Yes, can you... There we go.
You can see it.
So this is to recognize the work that's been done with Christy Belcourt, who started this campaign. It's a national campaign now. Raising awareness on the national crisis of missing and murdered Aboriginal women across the country, and it's a national crime that's not being dealt with. It needs to we need to continue to shed light on that, and since our governments are not responding, then we need to have a grassroots movement, which is really what this is about.
Why or how is that happening?
Well, racism. You talked about marginalization, colonialism. Since Canada became Canada, the impacts of colonialism has been purposely for one thing only, and that's to move people off of land so that companies can get very rich on resource extraction. And as a result, when you want to have a the influx of settlers that was coming in at the time, if you want to have people moved off or away from their home and put into places that are, uninhabitable, then you also have to have a way of, a propaganda so that you spread the message of racism so that your society believes in what it's doing is okay. And so here we are now, hundreds of years later, still reeling with the effects of oppression, stereotypes, racism. We still have a racist piece of legislature, still the Indian Act, and still dictates to a group of people how they should live. And that's unbelievable, considering the country that we say we're in.
Mm-hmm. What I think is beautiful, though, is you being able to take that message into schools and educate young people so that they understand and learn the stories of Native people, and you did that fantastically, let me say, with the work that you did in terms of your project. So can you share that with us a little bit more, please?
Sure. One of the things that I believe strongly in is Indigenous knowledge and connection back to the land. All the issues and challenges that we've talked about so far is land-based, and when you look at a lot of the problems that we face today, our toxic environment, pollution, mental health is all due to having that disconnection of the land. So being very blessed, having the opportunity to work with Christy Belcourt, who's a Métis artist, and Isaac Murdoch, who's from Serpent River First Nation, she came in and we decided that we would use an Ojibwe story. It's a sacred story dating back to the last ice age. It's also a story based on the stars. And so they came in, told the story, and although it's a story of the past, it's a story of right now and how we are contributing to the tar sands and plastic water bottles, and are we going to have, are kids going to be able to drink fresh water from, the water fountains in 10 years from now at their schools? Are we actually going to have an earth to live on? And so these were some of the issues that we needed to talk about, and we did that through this story, and as a result, over 100 students came together and painted these beautiful murals, and so it's about having that story told. It's a story of the past, but it's a story of right now. And so what part are we going to play in the story that we're in right now, and what kind of answers are we looking for, and how do we get people light that fire and get our youth to really be activists about making good change for the future.
And when you look at how the kids are involved, excuse me, when you look at how the kids are involved, they're actually listening to those authentic stories from Native people. Mm-hmm. And for you to be able to invite in Native people into the school, what was the biggest challenge?
Well, there's many challenges. Certainly having, building a network and reaching out to communities, I think is, a lot of people I think struggle with that because anything new is, I think there's fear to that, and so I guess naturally I'm a bit of a risk taker, and I'm naturally an out-of-the-box thinker, but having those community partnerships and building those relationships is really critical, and understanding what it means to be a to be a treaty partner and to have that ongoing relationship moving forward, and so it's so important to make those connections and bringing them into our schools to do that. And we're lucky that we have the funding to provide those opportunities, but many challenges exist, accessing that funding is definitely a challenge out there.
And that's something that you do really well, Clinda, is actually connecting with the community and making sure that you bring the Native people in, as with your role as the curriculum head.
Yeah, and I think it depends on what the focus is for each individual. But for me, when we looked at, and Jody has been a great resource for me for finding different community connections. But if we really want to be authentic, then it needs to be the Indigenous person who's speaking in the class. And so we spend the bulk of the budget that we have with bringing people into the classrooms, so that way the kids have the opportunity to have an authentic experience and something that's different for every single different person, because just because someone is Indigenous doesn't mean their story is the same as the next Indigenous person, and there's value in each of the different stories. And I'm really fortunate that we have a number of schools that are really focused on the collaborative inquiry with doing First Nations, Métis, Inuit collaborative inquiry in the school. So on our last PD day, we took a whole staff to the Woodland Cultural Center and the Mohawk Institute, and we went through with a survivor, and you could see the lens on the teachers change. Because it's one thing to read in the book and say, we know what happened in residential schools, but to go in and experience that and to listen to survivor, I could see a shift happen. And then you think those individuals now are going to go into the schools with a different lens. So it's not just about the knowledge, it's about the approach that they're taking.
What is the cultural sensitivity and the impact that it has when somebody is now enlightened, I guess, with the story of the authentic voice when they hear it, and then when they try to relay that to the kids? How have you noticed the difference?
It's a challenge for people because it's not a happy field trip, that's for sure. And you can see people reflecting. But what I think, and we're talking a little bit about this earlier, it's this acknowledgement around race and racism. And so if you don't have a good sense of yourself and your race, which I think many people who are white don't, then it's hard for you to go and approach with a broader lens without feeling shame and guilt, because that's not what it's about. What it's about is you really understanding yourself and see where have different people been part of the problem, because you can't be part of the solution if you don't acknowledge you're part of the problem in the first place.
So is this in high school or is this in elementary school?
The one I'm talking about was an elementary school. So, and I've been doing a lot of work. My background's as a secondary teacher, but it's been really exciting going into the elementary schools and having kindergarten kids so engaged with the stories, because that's the beautiful thing about Indigenous culture is it's all about storytelling, and everyone loves a good story. 3-year-olds love a great story, and they love drumming and dancing and singing, and so that's a perfect place to start the conversation.
I think that's so important to start earlier, because I think for a lot of people, unlearning everything that we have learned and opening our perspective to understanding not just Indigenous traditions and things that may be more superficial, but the fact that the reality and the manifestation is cultural genocide has happened here. Nobody wants to talk about that. So if we have those conversations and those understandings and those experiences earlier, it makes it so much easier really appreciate what has happened and take steps to move forward.
It was really neat. Today I had an experience where I'd brought an Inuit couple into a school because there's one school with an Inuit foster child who has no connection to her roots. And she's desperate to learn that. And the relationship that I saw develop between the couple and this child, it was beautiful. And I was saying earlier that it's a gift that I have this opportunity to help facilitate that. And just, the difference that I know it's making in that girl's life, it's quite beautiful.
I think we underestimate the impact that learning about your roots actually has on children. I remember a student of mine that we couldn't bring into school. We tried everything, mentorship programs, connecting them with other students within the school at all different levels. Couldn't get her in. And what it took was an alternative program where she was able to learn about her roots. And she shone. And so being able to do that and help the young people that are Native to actually find their voice and to understand who they really are, and to go a step further, and that is to get out to young people so that they hear the authentic voice. And I think what you do in terms of bringing those voices into schools is absolutely phenomenal. But a really courageous conversation, because that's not something that funding has been easily provided to. But to actually bring those voices and connect with the children, I think is phenomenal.
Do you guys do things like powwows?
We don't do it with the school.
With the school, no?
No.
Yeah,
no.
'cause I went to the University of Waterloo, and they have like an entire Aboriginal kind of department,
Yes.
and they lead the discussion there, and every once a month they would do a powwow there, and I went once, and it's really cool. It's really open, really, and it really breaks down the barrier.
Yes, we do culture camps where we bring kids out for 4 to 5 days in different places. We've gone way up north, and the idea behind that is, again, that connection to the land. We try and pick places that have no cell phone reception, because it really is about connecting to the land and being immersed in ceremony. And although it may not be their culture, everyone can relate to that, because again, it's about that relationship. It's about remembering who we are as human beings, and that we're so immersed in this world of fast pace, of having stuff, of believing this irrational belief of needing to have all these things to be happy, which is really just buying into, the system wants us to think that, so that we keep buying, so that we keep getting more stuff, which is really taking more for the environment. And it's this big wheel that we get on. And so education, I believe, is so critical in order to help stop that. And it's about empowering the youth so that they can find their voice and become active and making a change for the future and doing something different than that's been done so far.
Jody, you said something very interesting about community, all of us being different but coming together. And in a private session, I know you explained these artworks
Yes.
to me. One with a very interesting story that I think sums up exactly what you're talking about, and that's the image right behind you. Do you mind sharing that story with us and the audience?
Yes. So this panel, there's 4 panels, and this is the second of the story. And in this panel, it's about these 4 animals that have decided to try and save the earth that's been basically cast into like an ice age in response to the 2-legged, which is the humans, for losing their way and causing all kinds of, based on greed and not caring about each other anymore. And so these animals tried to go up into the sky where this spirit, old man in the sky, had taken away all the birds, and the 3 animals that went before, they couldn't break through this barrier. And so when they fell back down to the earth, each one at a time, the last animal, the fisher, he was faced with, he was the last animal to save the world. And how could he possibly do that? He's just this fisher. But yet, when he prayed and offered this petition, he looked up and he saw that there was a crack. And it's because of those other animals that went before him and tried to, jump through. He wouldn't have been able to get through that barrier if those other animals didn't make a difference, try. So the message is that every little bit counts. You can't have somebody just go off and solve the biggest world problem there is. No one person can do that, but we can change everything if everyone
work
does just
together.
one little
Yeah.
thing together. And that is the story of hope that I think, this is what this is talking about, is that we have to do these things together. And if we do it together, then change it's amazing how we can change.
Now, can you say that there's a correlation between the 4 animals in the story and the red, yellow, white, and black?
Ah, okay. I didn't. Maybe there is. Maybe you're onto something. But the medicine wheel colors, and they're different in different places, certainly. But again, the fundamental teaching, the fundamental behind that is that it represents, the 4 races of mankind, which really in a bigger scale means the beautiful diversity of our planet, and that everybody here lives in a place for a reason, and we all have gifts, and that we have to start to acknowledge our gifts and share those, and so that it's not about a me world anymore. It's how do I share my gift for others? Because then when that reciprocity starts to happen, then that's again where that change is going to come in, and hopefully we'll get back to being a little more kinder to each other.
So it's like an act of kindness.
Absolutely.
So when we're giving to the earth and we're giving to the planet and the universe,
Yes.
then we will
Absolutely.
that act of kindness returned to us. Kalinda, could you share with us what your key message would be for our viewers?
It would be one about focusing on relationships and reciprocity. So this idea that we don't ever take something without giving something back. It's the same thing when the elders or traditional knowledge keepers come into the class. We give them something in exchange for the knowledge that they're sharing with us. The same thing if we go to the forest to take something, we give something back.
And that's a beautiful image for all children to have, is to know that that's something that they need to do. And for you, Jody?
I think that understanding and educating people on why Indigenous knowledge matters to everyone, what does a treaty relationship mean to everyone, is really crucial moving forward in a good way. And also that we need youth to really make a difference and become active and stand up for the earth, because we need to have those youth active and making a difference.
Thank you very much for everything you do within the school boards and for our children. We'll be right back with the Voice to Action segment in just a moment.